Caves are one of Mother Nature's most fascinating creations. Although they are sometimes scary to explore, caves in most cases hold within strange and unexplainable discoveries. From paranormal artifacts to the uncovering of mummies far from the sands of Egypt, here are 15 strangest things found in caves that change everything. New species found after 5 million years in a cave. There is a specific record that details every animal species on this planet, but a new cave was found and this discovery threw that old record of animal species out of the window. In the southeastern part of Romania, a Roman geologist found the Movila cave in 1986. It is a small cave with narrow passages which are covered with clay, but with gorgeous and unique labyrinthine galleries. Uncovering this cave turned out to be one of the century's greatest discoveries that transformed the theories of life on Earth. When the cave was opened, Lascu got the shock of his life. The cave had been closed up for so long that it caused fresh air to become non-existing and toxic. Regardless of the toxicity, it allowed new life to form and thrive in the cave. Discovering these creatures was a complete shock, as they had not been seen elsewhere on Earth. Scientists identified 48 species living inside the prehistoric time capsule, including spiders, scorpions, centipedes, and many others. Incredibly, a whopping 33 creatures found are only found in this specific cave. They've existed for millions of years on this planet and yet were just recently discovered. But since the atmosphere in the cave was toxic, how did they thrive? A bit like the photosynthesis process that plants use to grow on the surface, this method uses chemosynthesis, which utilizes toxic gas instead of sunlight and turns it into food for the bacteria. The chemosynthesis process permits organisms to create energy through chemical reactions to generate food. Once these lower-level organisms have gotten their own food from the toxic air, they become food for larger organisms in the cave. Worms, shrimp, and other small creatures use the bacteria for food, and larger animals like spiders, scorpions, and other invertebrates feast on these smaller animals. This creates a perfect circle of life that allows everything inside the cave to continue living and be completely self-sufficient. Scientists are still marveling at this discovery because they do not know how the animals even came to be a part of the cave. Most researchers believe the bacteria have existed in the cave for more than 5 million years. The animals may have crawled or fallen through a hole into the cave shortly before the forces of Mother Nature sealed it up. Trapped inside, they had to adapt to their new environment and evolve to thrive on their limited resources. Haunted statue from paranormal cave. Hiking is one of the most notable sports in rocky and mountainous areas, and in these mountain areas, caves are usually located. As the weather became favorable, a guy from New York known as Danny and his friend went hiking. This hiking trip was one they wouldn't forget in their lifetime, as it was terrifying for both guys. In January 2016, Danny posted a story in the paranormal section on Reddit with his username Wigged Hiker the Way. In the post, he asked for help on behalf of his friend who said a spirit has haunted him after they went on a hiking session in the Catskills Mountains. In the mountains, they came across a weird wood-carved statue in a cave. This wood-carved statue had nails in its eyes and a noose around its neck, as Danny described in his post. He thought it looked very spooky and added that he got bad vibes from it. From what he felt, he told his friend not to take the statue from its original position, fearing it was related to the devil worshipping in that area. Not listening to him though, his friend went against his advice and took the statue from the cave, not knowing he was causing trouble for himself. Some days later, Danny got a call from the now petrified friend, telling him that he thinks the statue is haunted because it keeps moving from one location to another in his house. Also, he kept smelling weird stuff, like a really strong scent of pond water, and he couldn't sleep at night because the door banging kept him awake. At first, they thought it was his friend's pet dog moving the statue around, but the dog did not go anywhere near it. Danny also added in the post saying the dog has peed in the house 3 nights in a row and she has never done that. Later that week, Danny's friend recounted that loud knocks on his door awoke him and the pond water smell was stronger than ever. Upon opening, he saw no one at the door but noticed muddy footprints in the hallway. And not like shoe prints, but barefoot. That was the last straw for Danny's friend, so he took his dog and sought refuge at Danny's house. The duo was too scared to return the statue to the cave where it was taken, so they opted to send the figure to a Reddit commenter named Newkirk, who offered to place it in his paranormal and occult museum. Still, the statue didn't last long there. Newkirk updated the audience on the Reddit community, admitting that the statue is haunted by a violent entity. Newkirk posted, "A few hours after it arrived at my place, it pulled Jesus off a crucifix hanging on the wall, was the cause of phantom knocks, wet footprints on my couch, and we even caught it moving with a motion-activated camera." It sounds like something you would only watch in a movie, but this happened in real life. However, the statue had to be retired from his paranormal museum when weird events of rampant sickness, freak car accidents, and even seizures occurred to those who had come into direct contact with the haunted object, even though it remained strictly on a no-touching list. The Cave of the Crystal Maiden. The Cave of the Crystal Maiden is located in the Tapir Mountain Nature Reserve. It was discovered in 1989, and inside it were skeletons of ritual sacrifices that were made by the Maya to their gods. These skeletons dated over 1,000 years ago, but one stands out among them all. This particular skeleton's remains are called the Crystal Maiden because the skeleton is completely hardened and glistens in the light, similar to crystals. Initially, the skeleton was thought to have belonged to an 18-year-old girl, and only recently did suggestions come forth that it could have belonged to a boy. Regardless, the skeleton is still addressed as the Crystal Maiden. Due to its unique positioning and both vertebrates being crushed, scientists believe the Crystal Maiden was thrown or tossed to the ground after being killed, and has not been shifted for at least 1,100 years. The Crystal Maiden was not the only skeleton found there. Among other skeletons were victims who were infants between the ages of 1 and 3. There is one 7-year-old, a teenager of 15, and a 20-year-old. The rest are adults between the ages of 30 and 45. To give an insight into how spooky the cave is, there are stone altars and formations made by the Maya as you go through the passageways. There are also silhouettes of faces and animals on the cave walls, crafted by human hands, giving the cave its mysterious character. Other artifacts found in the cave include stoneware and ceramics. Some were also marked with kill holes to let spirits escape. Most of the relics have been well preserved just as they were left due to the calcification process of the cave and the fact that few artifacts have been removed from the cave since its discovery. The pottery found dates between AD 700 and 900. It could be around this period the bodies were also sacrificed. However, discovering this cave showed the world a glimpse of what life was like during the Mayan culture. The cave is also one of the best preserved in the world from that era in history. Altamura Man. This skeleton covered in calcite is that of a 170,000-year-old ancient human. It was discovered in a sinkhole in Lamalunga Caves at Altamura, Italy in 1993. Known as the Altamura Man, the skeleton was found lodged in a cave rock. The bones were so weak they had to leave them on the site to prevent any damages, but that didn't stop it from being checked by scientists. When reviewed, it was said that the Altamura Man possessed a couple of Neanderthal traits, especially in the skull's face and back. It also showed features that aren't usually seen in Neanderthals, such as its brow ridges, which were even bigger than that of the Neanderthals. These differences confused scientists because it was now hard to tell which human race the Altamura Man belonged to. Regardless, finding this bone has been a huge accomplishment for scientists. Even a paleoanthropologist at Sapienza University of Rome and co-author of the study, Fabio Di Vincenzo, commented on the Altamura Man. The Altamura Man represents a complete skeleton of a single non-modern human ever found. Almost all of the bony elements are preserved and undamaged. Regardless, new DNA research from a piece of the skeleton's right shoulder blade suggests the Altamura fossil was a Neanderthal, and the bone shape too. Scientists are also preparing to do more research on the 170,000-year-old bone with next-generation DNA sequencing technologies. They strongly believe they would show important details in the Neanderthal genome. Since former fragmentary fossils of different Neanderthals give a partial insight into what life looked like for Neanderthals, researchers believe that the Altamura skeleton could help paint a complete portrait of a Neanderthal. For example, it could show more details about the Neanderthal's anatomy, ecology, genetics, and lifestyle. Old footprints at Chauvet Cave. The Chauvet Cave near Vallon-Pont-d'Arc in southern France was discovered in 1994 by Jean-Marie Chauvet when she went on an exploration. This exploration discovered the oldest footprints of humans and a cavern with several new animal figures. These footprints that were found date between 20,000 and 30,000 years old, maybe twice as old as those discovered previously at Montespan, Aldeni, Peshmerl, Neo, and other Upper Paleolithic sites. Results from the footprint analysis show that the boy was walking side by side with a wolf or a dog. Covering over 100 feet of distance, the footprints were hardened in soft clay, preserving it for thousands of years. Scientists also suggested that the boy was about 4.5 feet tall, his feet more than 8 inches long and 3.5 inches wide. A few places on the site showed that the boy slipped on the soft clay floor, but scientists said the boy was not running but was walking steadily. A stain of charcoal was also seen in the cave, depicting that the child had a torch with him, but he stopped at a point to clean it up. Researching details about these 26,000-year-old footprints suggests that the origin of human-dog companionship could be dated to before the last ice age. Another discovery about these prints from the Chauvet Cave, together with all footprints found in Paleolithic caves, are all seen to be bare feet. This gave scholars an edge to postulate a theory that people of that time in history either left their footwear at the entrance of caves or carried them in. Neanderthals built mysterious cave structures 175,000 years ago. Early civilizations were known to live on Earth before the world's evolution got to the turn of modern humans. These past civilizations before us built some structures, some of which are left to tell us about their culture or existence. One such mysterious structure about these past civilizations was discovered recently in a French cave. This weird construction was made from almost 400 stalagmites removed from the ground and arranged on top of one another to create rudimentary walls on the damp cave floor. The most notable formations are 2 ringed walls constructed 4 layers deep in places, which have been propped up with stalagmites lodged in place as vertical stays. The largest of the walls is nearly 7 meters across and, where intact, stretches up to 40 centimeters high. Some wall sections depict clear signs of fire damage, with the stalagmites reddened, blackened, and fractured from the heat. This made scientists suspect the Neanderthals lodged fireplaces in the structures to brighten the cave. Around the construction site are round holes where the stalagmites were removed from the cave floor, depicting that the workers have not cleared up after themselves since at least the Middle Pleistocene. New tests were also conducted on the walls, showing they were much older than previously thought. Stalagmite tips and pieces of charred bone found in the walls date them to at least 175,000 years ago. This made the French and Belgian scientists who led the research believe that only Neanderthals could have created the structures. Other things were also found, such as bear marks, paw prints, tufts of fur, and even hibernation holes. Still, the site is well preserved because the stalagmites have been covered in calcium carbonate soon after the walls were constructed. If they had not been built so deep inside the cave, they probably wouldn't have stood the test of time in the 175,000 years since they were erected. But what the structures were built for remains a mystery. It is not sure that the walls were made for a particular purpose, but one thing that surprises scientists is that the Neanderthals were going so deep inside the cave where a lack of natural light would have left them in total darkness without fires. This has left the scientists with many questions. Were the walls built when Neanderthals found themselves deep inside the cave by chance, or was making underground structures something they regularly did? We can't say for sure, but this is one strange phenomenon. Prehistoric mummy found in a cave. Deep in the Mammoth Caves of Kentucky was an ancient mummy that had been trapped in the cave for years. Discovered in 1935, the ancient mummy was found by a small group of men who worked for the Civilian Conservation Corps. They were exploring a high platform in the area located about 4 kilometers from the historic entrance to Mammoth Cave. They climbed onto the ledge and discovered the ancient Native American remains. The ancient mummy named Lost John was found partially crushed underneath a boulder, and he was either wearing a blanket or robe tied with a cord. He was also wearing a cord necklace with a mussel shell pendant. Scientists believe that he had a mining accident and was kneeling when a boulder fell on him as he worked. During Lost John's time, mining minerals was a hot business. This is why scientists suggested that Lost John was collecting gypsum in the cave, and while he was hammering away at the crystals on the cave ceiling, he became trapped. The ancient mummy was not only found with his clothing, he was found with some work tools and a packed lunch, which are believed to be his. The fantastic thing about Lost John was that he was surprisingly well preserved, with his flesh and internal organs still intact. This perfect preservation happened due to the cave's dryness and the presence of minerals in the cave as well. Some tests were carried out on the ancient mummy, which showed that at the time of his death, he was only in his 40s. His last meal also seemed to include some hickory nuts and sunflower seeds. After these tests, Lost John was put on display along the historic tour route, where he remained for several years. That lasted for some decades until the 1970s, when the ancient miner had to be removed from display because it was no longer seen as appropriate. He was taken down from display at that point and reburied in a spot only known to the Mammoth Cave superintendent. Lost John now rests unbothered by the public, but he remains the most famous mummy found in Kentucky's caves. The Woman from Short Cave. Apart from Lost John, another mummy was found in the early months of the 1812 war. This time, the remains were of an ancient Native American woman. Her remains were well preserved within the cave environment, which sparked curiosity amongst the cave owners and people of the day. Although there isn't much information about the ancient woman's origin or what led to her passing, it is believed that she was likely an old and respected member of her society. After the discovery, the woman's body was evacuated and changed to the first large room inside the natural entrance of Mammoth Cave, now known as the Rotunda. However, this new change of location was uncomfortable with workers of the saltpeter mining operation that regularly used the Rotunda for their work. That led to the remains being moved away from the mining operation to an upper-level passage known as Gothic Avenue and put on a ledge. One of the early tourists to see the remains was Nahum Ward, a businessman and wealthy landowner from Marietta, Ohio. Upon seeing the ancient mummy, Ward petitioned the American Antiquarian Society to acquire the ancient remains for protection in its museum holdings. Unfortunately, though, he did it for his selfish interest. Ward kept the remains and added them to a touring program, making them suffer major damage due to frequent movement. The ancient mummy was eventually retrieved from Ward and sent to the American Antiquarian Society in 1817. Still, it continued to be on display to the public with the tagline Mammoth Cave Mummy. Eventually, it was transferred from AAS to the Smithsonian Institution, where it remains. The Salzburg Cube. Also known as the Wolf's Egg Iron, this object was found in Austria's mine during the 19th century. Discovering this strange artifact sparked a lot of controversies, as it seemed like an out-of-place artifact based on how the artifact's origin's location does not match its makeup. When it was initially discovered, the artifact didn't exactly look like a cube. This is why the name Wolf's Egg Iron sounded better. The cube itself is more of a round object with two flat edges. Down the cube's middle, it has a groove that shows the artifact's most defining feature. Also, the iron features several pits and craters that cover its surface completely, including the central groove. Another weird thing about the Salzburg Cube is its features, which seem like it came from another world. Upon discovery, the mine workers initially thought it was a meteorite until it was picked up and examined. They then saw that the miner who spotted the cube was breaking open a piece of coal before the cube was found inside it. It is believed that the piece of coal is over 60 million years old, which dates the Salzburg Cube to be very prehistoric. After the Salzburg Cube was found, a manager at the site took the artifact to the Heimat House Museum. From there, it was also put on show in Linz, which lasted until 1958, when it was transferred to the Natural History Museum of Vienna for further research. Before it left the museum in Linz, they made a cast of the cube. Still, will the mystery behind this prehistoric artifact be unraveled? We'll have to wait and see. Well-preserved claw. Discovered in 1987 while exploring a cave in New Zealand, a team of archaeologists was shocked to see a bird's claw with its flesh and muscles still intact. When it was examined, it turned out to be a foot from the now extinct moa bird which roamed Earth some 700 to 800 years ago. This group that made the legendary find of the extinct creature was the Speleological Society of New Zealand. The moa bird had a total of 8 species during its time on Earth, with some of them the size of a turkey. Some of them were also huge like ostriches, weighing as much as 500 pounds and growing to 12 feet in height. The discovered claw was dated to be over 3,000 years old and thus suggested that the animal was native to New Zealand. The flesh-covered claw of the extinct moa bird became a social media buzz when an announcement was made regarding it. Some people even called it science fiction and a prop, as they didn't believe in the animal's true existence. 9,000-year-old skeleton. A 9,000-year-old skeleton was discovered in Cheddar, England in 1903. It was the oldest complete skeleton in England and was found 20 meters deep in the Goff's Cave in Cheddar Gorge, England's main site for Paleolithic human findings. After the bones were discovered, a television series named Once Upon a Time in West on Archaeology in Somerset conducted a DNA test of 20 local people whose families were known to have stayed in the area for generations. Then they would relate the test result with the 9,000-year-old skeletons. The Oxford University's Institute of Molar Medicine performed the DNA testing. The tests were performed and suddenly they found a perfect match. Adrian Target, a 42-year-old history teacher's DNA by his mother's line, matched with the 9,000-year-old Cheddar Man. The DNA results trace back 300 generations, and the skeleton is now the world's most distant confirmed relative. The discovery of this skeleton also showed that farming spread through the population, contrary to the idea that farmers moved into Western Europe from Eastern Europe. The Catacombs of Paris. The Paris Catacombs are cemeteries located in Paris, France. These cemeteries comprise the remains of over 6 million people in a small section of a tunnel system made to connect the city's momentous stone quarries. The crypt was constructed to stop the city's overflowing graveyards. It spans south from the Barrière d'Enfer to the Gate of Hell, the previous city gate. Arrangements for the Paris Catacombs began when multiple basement walls collapsed around the Holy Innocent Cemetery in 1774. That kicked off the project, and by 1786, nightly processions of covered wagons were transported from most of Paris's cemeteries to a mine shaft that had been operated close to the Rue de la Tombissoire. Decades later, in 1809, the catacombs became open to the general public. After the circuit, a register was created which allowed visitors to record their expressions for the crypt. The list got filled up very fast due to the huge amounts of visits that both French people and visitors from other countries paid for. Many famous people like Jules Ardouin Mansart, Racine, and Blaise Pascal are buried in the Paris catacombs, amongst others. Due to the huge number of visitors, the ossuary had to make many changes in the 19th century. Now in the modern day, almost 550,000 pay a visit to the catacombs every year. It is also accessible to everyone without a permit. Hobbits. The Liangbua Caves in Flores, Indonesia were discovered in 2003 by a group of archaeologists. At first, this cave exploration seemed to be the usual until the archaeologists discovered something that took their breaths away. They found some human bones, which seemed to be adult Homo sapiens upon analysis. But one shocking thing from the discovery is that these adult Homo sapiens were 3.5 feet tall, so the cave explorers named them hobbits. This finding swept every scientist's legs off, as the bones of the not-extinct humans were so small that it was even a full foot smaller than the smallest of the African pygmies. Although there are some theories about this bone's height, the skeletons probably suffered from a disease that made them short. However, recent research has considered this theory false and proclaimed the discovered little bones are Homo floresiensis. They're a race of normal, healthy, upright, intelligent people, also known as hobbits, and bones found in the cave are about a hobbit size. Bones of a 100-year-old axe murderer. If you're a history fan, the story of Joseph Henry Lovelace is intriguing. Being a notorious person, Lovelace was a career criminal who committed many atrocities. One such crime was the death of his wife Agnes in 1916. In the investigation of her death, the authorities arrested Lovelace and brought him to jail on the suspicions that he had murdered his wife with an axe. Unknown to the authorities, though, Lovelace kept a tiny saw blade that he kept in his shoe and used it to escape jail. From that moment on, he was never seen again. Surprisingly, Lovelace was found again, but in an unexpected state. In 1979, a family explored the Buffalo Cave in Idaho when they encountered an unknown torso, decapitated and left to decay in a sack. 12 years later, in 1991, a matching arm was discovered, which sparked the search that discovered both missing legs and an arm. The body was DNA tested 18 years later, and results suggested it could be the culprit, Lovelace. To confirm this theory, Lovelace's grandson, now 88 years old, gave DNA to ensure the results. The outcome of this body came out to be the murder suspect Joseph Henry Lovelace, eventually found 103 years after he was last seen alive. The events that led to his death are unknown, but some believe that Agnes's family tracked down Lovelace and exerted their revenge. Bird carving found in cave. This tiny carving of a bird was discovered in the Hohlefels cave in Germany. The carving is a sculpted piece made of mammoth ivory and stands as the earliest representation of a bird ever found. Another figurine was found which showed a water bird with a horse's head and a lion's mane. This evidence is minimal, but discovering it showed as a piece of strong evidence that shamanism was practiced in the past. Birds, especially water birds, are considered to be favorite shamanic symbols. The bird sculpture on the ivory looked very realistic. It has a well-formed head, eyes, and neck stretching out as if flying. It was found alongside the figure of an owl, and researchers postulate that Neanderthals might have made the bird figurines. However, there are also theories that early modern humans made them. Carbon dating techniques revealed that these art pieces were carved between 28,000 to 35,000 years ago. Which of these discoveries do you think is the strangest? Let us know in the comments section below.